Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And we are back. And today we're going to talk about why isn't my judge listening? I have a lot of people that feel this frustration and feel like they go in and they try to explain themselves and the court just doesn't seem to be getting it. And so, Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Attorney.
Tell us why our judge doesn't seem to listen to us.
I think that a lot of times people have misconceptions about what it is that the court's really concerned about. They think that this is about painting the other party in a bad light. I'm going to show this party is a total jerk and impossible to deal with, and I should get full custody. And so they come to court with these list of attacks against the other party, when that's not really what the court's looking for. A lot of times the self-represented parties don't really have a coherent theory of their case. You have to kind of see this from the position of the court. Okay, I've got 8 or 10 cases on my morning calendar. 5 of them have 20-minute time estimates, so I can't do all of them. I have to use some sort of triage or economy, and I have to get through these cases. Now, typically, I've read your pleadings, unless they are, just so long that they make my eyes.
I got a headache in the middle and stopped.
But I've at least tried to read your pleadings and tried to figure out what is the thread that kind of connects all of this, and that's huge. That if you have a theory of your case, that helps you because you can kind of tack the facts onto your case's through line, so to speak.
Right.
And if you don't know what a through line is,
go back a few episodes and listen to it. Yeah.
But a lot of times, the court after having read your pleadings, has made a kind of a tentative ruling, and what they want to do with the parties is they want to test that ruling against each of the parties' arguments to see if they want to change your mind. So in a way, kind of cluing in to what the court's concerns are really helps. And in general, in a child custody case, the foremost concern of the court is safety. So if you can get that off the table, then you can talk about what kind of parenting plans are in the child's best interest. So after safety, I think the second biggest concern is the support of the other party for the other party's, the support of one party for the other party's parent-child relationship. I think that's a big one. So we want to see, as judges, we would want to see cooperation. We want to see people making efforts to cooperate and not attacking the other party. So that's one thing, is that the judge wants to see one thing and you're giving them another. And I see this all the time. Let me finish. I want to finish. I want to say what
I want to be heard.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. And that's not persuasive. It's not persuasive.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm working with coaching clients, and sometimes I'm helping self-represented parties kind of craft their statements to the court or whatever, kind of lay out their ideas of what to say. And it's kind of like very frequently it's like, well, you have a motion on calendar regarding support.
Right.
And that person wants to go through all the ways that the other parent is messing up the custody stuff or
Right.
causing problems in the custody stuff.
Right.
And it's like the custody stuff doesn't have anything to do with the support stuff. If you're on
Yeah.
calendar for custody stuff, then let's write, points about custody. But if you're on for support, you don't need to make arguments about custody,
Yeah.
And so really understanding what, like you said, what the judge is focused on, given what
Yeah.
the issue that you're in front of the court for is, as
Right.
opposed to just trying to regurgitate every horrible thing that other person has ever done in this situation.
Right. Well, in the case of child support, the argument really revolves around the inputs to the disomester.
Right.
So if you're not talking about one of those inputs, then what you're saying is totally irrelevant. And
Right.
that's why they're not listening to you.
Right.
So what the court wants to know is, what's the timeshare?
Right.
And the timeshare is what you're doing. So if you come to court with a calendar that documents when the child's been in your care and when the child's been in the other party's care, then you have an advantage on that issue. And it doesn't matter if they're being a jerk or withholding the child or saying negative things about you to the child. Doesn't matter. The question is, when is the child physically in your care?
Right.
The court wants to know how much each party earns. What is the gross income of the parties? And so such things as pay stubs come into play. Or if you're self-employed, you might want to have a fairly detailed profit and loss statement
Right.
to show the court, to persuade the court that this is what I earn.
Right.
And there are some more complicated issues, but those are the issues that you're before the court on. And he's being a jerk is just not a persuasive argument in a support case.
Right. So it's real important that you understand, depending on what you're in front of the court for a decision on, it's important to understand what relevant information the court is looking for in regard to that issue.
Right. And in a way, in a custody case, the court is kind of looking and seeing, well, who wears the black hat in this case? Whose fault is it? Keeping in mind, of course, there's a maxim in family law that says Attila the Hun never marries Mother Teresa. After you've been doing family law for as long as we have, you start to realize that there's usually some fault on both sides.
Right. Well, there's always fault on both sides in every
Right.
situation. Yeah.
Right. But if your agenda is to just blame the other party, that's when your judge's eyes are going to glaze over.
Right, because one of the things that the judge is really looking for, I would say a kind of overarching thing that they're looking for in every aspect of the case, is for people to take responsibility.
Right.
The court is huge on self-responsibility. And when you're blaming the other person, that says, I'm not responsible for this.
Right.
And it's interesting because even when you have people that have really struggled with very concerning issues such as alcoholism or drug addiction or something like that, we see those people have very high success rate of turning it around and getting good outcomes from the court when they take responsibility for those situations and say, you know what, I have this problem. Here's what I've done. I'm in AA. I'm in weekly counseling. I'm in a group program. I'm in, whatever it is, because the court doesn't expect us to be perfect. And I think that's one of the sort of,
only you are perfect, Tim. Stop it.
I think that's one of the misconceptions that get in people's head is I can't admit to the court that I've made any kind of mistakes.
Right.
I sort of have to have this facade of perfection and show the court that the other parent has all these issues.
Well, the court knows that's bullpucky.
Correct. And so it makes you look even less credible because of that. right?
Yes.
I mean, it makes your arguments even less credible. And so when you can stand up and say, look, okay, I, in the past have been, overprotective or I've been, whatever, like sometimes you can take what the other parent's accusing you of and kind of turn it around that way. Like if they say, oh, she's like one of the things we hear about moms, oh, they're too enmeshed with the child.
Yeah.
And you can say, look, in the past, I've realized that maybe that was an issue, but I have the child in therapy. I'm in therapy. We're dealing with this issue.
My attorney's in therapy.
I understand that the child's
Court reporter's in therapy.
I understand that the child's relationship with dad is important. The child needs time with dad. Da 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 da. And that's a form of taking responsibility for that issue instead of saying, "Well, I'm not enmeshed. He just doesn't care about the kid."
Yeah. Well, and on a more basic level, consider two arguments in a parental alienation case. Your Honor, the problem in this case is my ex-wife. All she does is badmouth me to the kids, and she says that I'm a lousy dad and that I don't love them and that I don't care, and she never disciplines them, and she never says anything that she gives them anything they want, and they always take her side, and so she's alienating these children from me. Okay, that's one way to argue about that, and of course she'll deny.
Right.
She'll take the witness stand. She'll deny everything.
Right.
And then, but here's another thing. Here's a different argument, and I'm not saying that this will work in front of every judge.
This is not legal advice.
You cannot. Yeah, you have to kind of. It's a good idea to go and watch your judge and just observe on a certain calendar, so you get to know. But I would say the vast majority of judges would be more persuaded by this statement. Your Honor, it doesn't really matter what's going on in Mom's house. Well, I mean, you don't have to say that, but I would say this. It's been 6 months since I've talked to Junior, and I miss him. And I don't understand why this child doesn't want to talk to me, but I'd be willing to do anything to repair that relationship. I would crawl over broken glass if the court would just show me if the court has any ideas. I'd love to know them as to how I can get back. It's also important in that case to establish, I think, that you're kind of going the extra mile. Make a child-focused argument. Say, I try to show up for the ball games, and I get the homework, and I'm present for parent-teacher conversations. And it just seems like the more I do, the further this child gets away from me. So maybe we could use some conjoint therapy around this.
Yeah, and what that argument does is then, see, people want to make this direct argument of, oh, look at Mom and what she's doing, she's the problem, or vice versa, whichever.
Well, Mom usually is the problem.
But if you're dad and you make an argument like that, then what happens is the court goes, wow, I have a parent who's literally standing here telling me they will do anything to be involved with their child. This is really weird that the child wouldn't want anything to do with a parent that's so interested in being involved. Therefore, there's got to be something weird going on Mom's end. I need to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
That's what happens in the court's head. But see, it's an indirect thing.
So, ma'am, are you bad-mouthing the dad to your children?
Right. And so what happens, though, is this is a very indirect argument. You sort of have to trust what is happening in the judge's head, even though he or she isn't verbalizing it. And you have to have a little bit of trust in what the outcome's going to be, which is hard to do. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's better to let the judge draw their own conclusion. It's better to put out your positive things and then let the judge draw their own conclusion about the case. I find that in a situation where you're letting the judge draw their own conclusion, I'm amazed at how often they get it correct.
Yeah.
And I think when the judge gets it wrong, a lot of times it's because of what we talked about in our previous episode.
Yeah.
You know, one person is, both parties are fighting and they can't figure out who the jerk is.
Right.
You know, so to speak. And so that kind of indirect argument, I think, is much more persuasive than a direct full-on attack, which is what most of us want to do.
Right. And simple is better. Simple is better than complex. Let me give you 30 things that my ex-wife has done to alienate the children.
Right.
Number one.
Right. Right. And you've already lost their attention.
Right.
It's like when we see declarations that are single spaced, like one run-on sentence, like, 30 lines down the page, just back to back to back to back. You just look at that and you think, oh gosh, I gotta wade through this.
Yeah. I mean, I find that the most the most persuasive arguments in any custody case have to do with the party who's arguing their parent-child relationship, and what are they doing to create that, and then second, what are they doing to support the other parent in their parent-child relationship, and those arguments are always made through the eyes of the child,
right?
So that if you have concerns about the other parent, Junior sees mom lying on the couch all the time, recovering from a hangover, and he doesn't understand. That would get the court's attention.
Right.
Right.
There are certain concerns that are significant that you can present. Yeah. In a certain way. You just don't want your whole strategy to be attacking the other parent. That's not to say not to bring up safety concerns. I think you have to bring up safety concerns. But a full-on attack of the other parent is not what the court's looking for.
Right.
And also, I find that if one person does have a concern and they've sort of had this history of not attacking the other parent, that concern actually gets listened to.
Yeah.
But if my whole strategy is I'm just attacking the other parent through the whole thing, then what happens is that true concern that's in there gets lost in all the minutia. And I think that happens a lot. People are going, why doesn't the judge care about this? Why doesn't the judge care about this? It's not that the judge doesn't care about that issue. It's that you've sort of gotten this reputation of complaining about so many. It's kind of like Little Boy That Cried Wolf.
Correct.
You're complaining about so many different things that they don't know which thing is the real concern and which thing isn't.
Right. So every once in a while I get a call from a party who tells me that they need an aggressive attorney. I need somebody that's going to represent me aggressively and is going to argue aggressively.
Right.
And so I say, okay, what's your first and last name? I write that down. And then I go to my computer and I look up the Register of Action.
On the court's website. And
a lot of times what I see is ex parte, request for order, ex parte, motion,
teen filings.
motion by counsel to be relieved.
Yeah. Right. Followed by somebody wants out, they're tired of your crap.
And here's what that party is trying to do. They're trying to change their child custody situation, and they're using the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Right. Right.
And so you see them constantly resorting to the court, and guaranteed the judges have thousands of cases.
Right.
If a lot of my people, if you ask the judge who they were, they wouldn't even remember.
Right.
They don't even remember the last hearing.
Right.
And that's good. But if the judge knows your kids' birthdays and
right. Remembers the whole family unit, yeah,
it's like
that's
minors
not good.
council.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. Then you're doing too much. So I guess one of the ways to help your judge listen to you is not to resort to the court very much.
Right.
Try not to raise small issues.
Right.
And then when you do have to go, because sometimes I have a low conflict divorce.
Right.
But we've been to court twice.
Right.
In 18 years.
Right. Right. Well, one of the big issues you disagreed on was where the oldest was gonna start school when he started kindergarten, and and when you just don't agree, it's like there's no point in continuing to argue about it. You got to go in and let the court decide.
Yeah.
And we didn't love the court's decision. We didn't really felt like we won on that issue, but in the end, I think the court was prescient, and it worked out.
Well, the court the court will listen to you, though, if you're not in front of them over every little thing.
Right. Right. And people tend to think that the court can solve their problems. And, we've done an episode on that particular issue. But really, the thing that solves your problem the most, I think, is your own behavior. I mean, we talk about this a lot. It's like if you're a parent and you feel like we have one case right now where dad is accusing mom of alienating the children, and Thomas's client is mom in this case, and it's like everything they're doing is just blaming mom, and these kids are teenagers. It's not like they're not old enough to communicate with dad directly themselves or whatever. They just don't. But you've got the girls in different activities, in different extracurricular activities. And it's like, one of the questions I asked mom a few weeks ago is, has dad showed up for any of these?
Yeah.
And her answer was no. And I was like, does he know about them? And she's like, yes, because I think he helped pay for at least part of them or whatever. So it's kind of like with my boys had ball games.
Right.
It's like their dad knew the schedule. He knows when all the games are. And he did, to his credit, he did show up for some of them, but not all. But if I was a parent that was completely alienated to the point where my kid wouldn't even talk to me, I'd be showing up at every single game or
and not
band concert or whatever,
and not expecting any attention from them.
Right.
Just being
there.
Yeah.
Because that is part of how, I missed one game my older son's entire high school basketball career. He played for 4 years in high school. And I never missed a game, whether he was starting in that game or whether he sat the bench the whole game, and there were a few of those, or whatever happened, I was there. I missed one game, and he remembers that. And my younger son, same thing. 4-year career, I never missed a single game in my younger son's entire high school career. They remember that I was present. It's not like they were saying to me at the time, "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you're here," or "Oh, Mom, thanks for coming to my game," or there was no appreciation, no nothing.
Yeah, sometimes it's, I wish you'd just go away.
Yeah, why are you here? You're embarrassing me. Go away, But
Well, what's that scene there's always this happy ending there's a certain kind of Hollywood movie where the happy ending is the parent, the kids in the school play, right?
Right.
And they're doing it, and all of a sudden the parent that's been estranged shows up at the door,
right?
And he's looking in, and the child sees the parent, and they have a moment,
right? Right.
And that's kind of what you're going for, right?
Right. And that's, you can show up and be present no matter what that other parent is doing.
Yeah.
And if you're alienated, then you need to take those actions instead of just sitting back and saying, oh, this is all the other parents' fault.
Yeah.
Because then if you're going into court and you're saying, you know what, Your Honor, I'm doing everything I can. I text them every day. I call once a week. I've left voicemails. I show up to every extracurricular activity they have. I've done all, and you can list out all the various ways that you've tried to interact with the child. Then the court's natural inclination is going to be, wow, what's going on with the other parent that these children aren't interacting?
Right.
But to simply just blame one parent when you're not really making any effort is not really a persuasive argument most of the time.
Right. And by the way, if you're on the other side of that,
right.
I think it's very important to one of the things the court really wants you to do is to exercise your parental authority to enforce the parenting schedule. Mom, I don't want to go to Dad's. Well, I understand how you feel. So get in the car, you're going to Dad's.
Right. Yeah. And I talk to clients about that a lot. Like acknowledging, like when the child comes in and they have a complaint about the other parent's household, that can be difficult, especially if sometimes you're thinking in your head, oh yeah, that's what it felt like for me being married to that other person. And you kind of understand that child's feelings. It's one thing to validate their feelings, and it's a different thing to sort of create an alignment between you and the child against the other parent. And that's harmful to children. So you have to be careful. And these are all the reasons that the court is, these are all the things the court is looking at, and sometimes why we feel they're not listening to specific issues.
Right. Right.
So.
Right. So moral of the story is that you have to kind of understand what the court is up against as far as making a decision in the case, because they want to make the right call. They really do. And what are the things they're looking for? And, they're looking for somebody who takes responsibility. Mm-hmm. They're looking for somebody who supports the other parent. And they're looking for somebody who is really actually focused on the well-being of the child and desirous of establishing that relationship. And if you take that stance, most of the time, not all the time, the court will see things your way.
Yeah, and they're looking for somebody who is problem solving.
Right.
Because people get positional and they argue about all this stuff, but nobody's trying to actually solve the problem.
Right.
Therefore what? That's always my question.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So what are we going to do about it?
Right. There's all these problems. Okay, great.
That's true.
Yeah.
We could do a whole nother
episode on that. Yeah, maybe we will. All right, so that'll wrap it up for us today. Thanks for joining us. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to get notified as new videos come out. If you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to rate and review us and also subscribe so you get notified of new episodes. And as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.